Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another week of astrology. I hope you're all doing well. This report is for February 18 through February 24 of 2025. So this week we start things off with a pretty big change. We just had the sun ingress Pisces for a change of season and a change of focus. And now it just adds to all this Pisces, so we have a pretty big Pisces stellium going on. That's going to be the main energetic for the week ahead, and even by next week when we reach the Pisces new moon, even more Pisces going on. So I'll explain what it all means as I go through this report. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, preparing for this big new beginning that's headed for the world. We also have the moon here waning through the sign of Scorpio for the next couple days, but it is in trine with all this Pisces, so that's good. But then the moon will ingress Sagittarius and square the sun for the last quarter moon of this current lunar cycle, and plus the moon in Sagittarius will be square all this Pisces. So that'll be a little more of a challenging phase there for 2.5 days this week, starting on Thursday and Friday and into Saturday, actually. So about 3 days, it looks like, of some challenge. And then the moon will ingress Capricorn, which is another sign that it's not at its best in, although in this phase, the moon will be sextile all the Pisces from Capricorn, but still making a couple squares in an opposition as well. And then the last aspect of this report week, by Monday night, the moon will ingress Aquarius. So we'll have the moon in Aquarius by next week as I come back for next week's report. And then, like I said, we'll have that Pisces new moon and a brand new lunar cycle, which will be the beginning of the end that I'll talk about next week as well. So that's the lunar aspects. Now we have a couple of the things that are happening here, and that includes Saturn. Saturn is now finally done with its full retrograde process. This is where Saturn went retrograde back in early summer of 2024. So now it's back and it's going to enter new territory from this point forward. So that will be significant if you have personal planets at, say, the end of 19 degrees or 20, 21 degrees. Then, you're going to have a rare Saturn transit coming up, and plus all these other transits that will be activating your personal planets. Like I said, if you have, personal planets around 19 to 22 roughly in the short term, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. And if you do have a personal planet there, it's a Saturn transit. It only happens every 28 to 30 years, and it's generally a pretty serious time for whatever that planet means in your chart. And then if you have planets beyond that, for the whole 10 degrees of the last 10 degrees of the mutable signs, you're going to be under Saturn transit for the rest of this year. All right, so that's one big thing, is Saturn moving forward into fresh new territory. And then we also have this Mars here. Mars is just barely creeping for the next couple days, and it's going to station direct at 17 degrees here on, looks like, Sunday night on February 23. So Mars is barely moving. We can consider it stationary all week, and especially by the weekend and into next week. So everything about Mars becomes more powerful this week and next week. So that's some of the more conflict and tension aspects going on. And plus, it's still in a wide orb square. Not a wide orb, actually. It's only 3 degrees square Chiron still. And so as it turns direction, it'll then have to build up momentum forward, with this square to Chiron. And then eventually it'll square it perfectly again down the road. But also, we still have this Saturn-Mars trine that's been going on. And now that Mars is turning direction, it can try to stay within this trine with Saturn continuing. It's already been here for a few weeks, and we'll have that more. So that's great for, again, getting things done, being productive, more disciplined, building, structuring. And there could be a turning point for any kind of processes that have been playing out for the last couple months, especially any kind of building or home and family or property stuff. There's a turning point and things want to start moving forward slowly but surely. And Mars is going to be stuck here for a while. So don't think that just because Mars is stationing direct, everything is just moving forward very rapidly. The bigger picture is, because of this new era being all about Aries, there is this bigger theme of life moving forward, but be very patient, as Mars is stuck here at 17 degrees. all the way until basically the second week of March. Mars is just going to be stuck here. So again, if you have personal planets, being affected by this Mars, which would be, let's say, 17 degrees through 20 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then you're under this Mars transit, and you've already been under it, but now you have to deal with it from now, like I said, until the second week of March. Let's just say until we get to the eclipse by mid-March, because that kind of brings everything to a head. And then Mars will be moving forward out of, from 18 to 19, and eventually it'll move back to Leo, where it went retrograde, and move forward. But that's still a ways away, not anytime soon. So Saturn, Mars, that's big news right there. We still have to be very careful of accidents and injuries because of this Mars square Chiron. It's only 3 degrees, and now that Mars is amped up this week, you still should be very careful, be mindful, especially because this Mercury is in a pretty tough spot that I'll be talking about as well. And we do have some other aspects other than the last quarter moon, the crisis in consciousness phase that we come into by Thursday. Then we also have Mercury squaring Jupiter. That's going to be exact on Thursday as well. And then we get to Sunday here, like I said, and Mars is stationing direct, but we also have Mercury trine Mars. So overall, there's not a ton of hard aspects, but because the moon, is going to be in Sagittarius, that could be maybe a little bit of the tougher phase, but we'll take a look day by day as I always go through these the charts day by day. But really, it's just going to be lunar aspects other than these main events here. So that's good. There's not terrible aspects that are exact other than this Mars square Chiron. That's one of the most challenging aspects in play. All right, so with that, I'm going to go through all this, but just looking at the chart, we have a lot of water going on right now. We have this stellium in Pisces, we have Mars in Cancer, and the moon in Scorpio. So it really is all about the water as we set things off for this week ahead. And water is all about emotions and feelings and intuition and the inner world and sensitivity, and more kind of guarded and protective and more hidden behind the scenes, especially now that the sun is in Pisces. So check your chart and see, where do you have Pisces? It is the beginning of the end of all this. It really is, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. And we also have this Neptune coming back to the last degree. It's not going to be exact this week, but it's already close enough. Neptune at this edge. I've been talking about this for months already. Neptune coming to the edge of Pisces is about really big storms, record-breaking storms, water events, and there could even be some bigger stuff on the horizon here for this year ahead and next year as well. So now that the sun is in Pisces, it puts even more energetics, more focus on these behind-the-scenes matters, which has a lot to say about all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, on one level, the weather and water events could be very strong, but it's also symbolic. This is emotions and feelings and intuition, like I said. So it's not as much about an outward vibe now, because if we look at the Aquarius, we just have Pluto there. So there's no more focus. And when the moon is moving through Aquarius, it'll close all that Aquarius out, and then we'll fully be in the Pisces. But as far as we have the Jupiter still here in Gemini, which adds a little more of the media, social media, more of the outward vibe, communications, networking. There's still some of that going on, but generally speaking, now that we don't have as much air and fire, it's mostly not as social. It's not as outward. People generally want to be in their own world. Now, with that said, when it comes to Pisces, this kind of Pisces, this can still be large groups of people that don't have boundaries between them, like really close together and stuff. So Pisces can be a sign that is connected to a lot of people sometimes, especially when there's a lot of planets in Pisces. But it's still behind the scenes. It's still more sensitive than normal. Energetic sensitivity is very strong. Imagination is very strong. And all the issues that we deal with Pisces is now going to be the main theme and the main focus as the sun will be going through all this, shining a light on everything that's usually hidden and behind the scenes. So yes, on one level, it talks about storms and water events and feelings and emotions and sensitivities, but there's so much about this Pisces because, with this Neptune and Saturn here and this North Node of Destiny and eclipses in Pisces, things are trying to be exposed. There's been so much things behind the scenes for years that have been secretive and not very easy to understand, because of the Neptune era, the Piscean era that we've been in. This is like the grand finale. This is the closure, especially once we get to that Pisces new moon, and it's the beginning of the end. So we still have a little time left of this Pisces, but eventually it's all gonna close out. Eventually, we're not gonna have anything left in Pisces, which would mean that eventually everything that's been hidden from behind the scenes could be coming out more and more and more from this point forward, which includes big scandals and conspiracies and hidden things that have just been very deep and, not able to see very clearly, basically. So with all this big, rare stuff going on, it's going to be exposing a lot more things that were hidden, especially now that the sun is putting all of its rays in this area, shining its light here, highlighting things that are normally hidden and hard to see from this point forward. But because Mercury is here, Mercury is debilitated in this sign, so it's not a good sign for Mercury in the collective, in the bigger picture on the mundane level of astrology, which includes transportation and traveling, and we've seen so much, I've been telling you guys about the traveling and all this. So, all these stats about how safe air travel is, that's not the point. You're totally missing the point for those people that brought that up. This is a new era. This is a new dynamic that's coming in. And it's not just about Mercury when it comes to travel. It's starting to look like this Pluto in Aquarius has something to say about air travel, because last time we had this, there was no airplanes. So this is the first time that we're really seeing this. And it is looking like perhaps there could be more of a destructive phase for transportation and traveling in general, not just air travel, but traveling in all different forms of old technology. That is going to be changing. And that's the point of this Pluto transit, is that it has to destroy the old technology so that we can come into this new technology. So that's going to be the theme over this next 20 years. So perhaps in 20 years from now, we can look at the stats and see if they've changed from the past. But my point is that, especially with Mercury debilitated, you have to always be extra careful. And then also with Mars squaring Chiron. And this is on all forms, your own everyday life. The self has to be more careful as well. Pay more attention, because with Mercury here, it could be wrapped up in feelings and energetics, picking up on things from other forms, other realities, other dimensions, and not just focused on the practical and the details of the physical realm. So just be more cautious and pay more attention with everything when it comes to what you're doing. But still, Mercury's in a difficult place overall, and it's applying towards Saturn, which Mercury is also the mind and communications and thoughts. And so there could be this increase for some people around fears and pressure and worry about things. And this is where you have to be careful of, the way you're perceiving things and looking at things. Sometimes this can be an indication of a little bit of depression or a down vibe here that could start coming in, because again, the sun is going to be applying towards Saturn, Mercury is. So all this behind the scenes heaviness becomes stronger and stronger. Now, on the other hand, it all depends on your personal chart and how Pisces is for you. What is Pisces for you? So check your chart and know that whatever area of life that is, that's where the main focus and energetics are, and this overall ending and restructuring that's trying to happen to that area. So yes, like I said, on one level, it's the conspiracies and scandals in the world and weather events. And then this is also going to increase people's need for escapism tendencies, for avoidance. Again, this is like the last sign of the zodiac before Aries season, the equinox, where things really want to take off, especially, with the Mars that will be building up momentum forward by then. So we're not still in great activity here even though Mars is going to station direct, it's retrograde for the most of this week and slow. And Pisces is more about preparing for the new from behind the scenes. It's more like you better recharge your energetic batteries in this phase. I'll talk more about this next week when we reach the Pisces new moon, because that whole cycle will be about, what I'm talking about right now. But even now, this week as well, start preparing, rest when you can, because you're going to need a lot more energy coming this spring when we reach Aries season and things really start to move forward with a lot of activity with new stuff. So from now until then, it's a lot of working on things behind the scenes. Again, you need to rest, recharge spiritual batteries as well, because it's like I said, because it's the last sign of the zodiac, we've spent a year of the full cycle around the zodiac, and now that's where people are tired and worn out, when we're in this kind of Pisces vibes. And then also this can bring up health issues for people as well. Pisces deals with health. It just deals with health in mysterious ways. A lot of Pisces people, or even Libra risings that have Pisces in the 6th house of health, this has been a phase around health that's coming to a close as well. For those people, like I said, Pisces people, Libra rising people, but then even in general, Pisces is still connected to health. It's just psychological health, mental health, things that are behind the scenes that can affect physical health that aren't as easy to see. But the problem is because Neptune has been here for so long, there's been a lot of creativity and imagination about health, and a lot of people coming up with new ideas about health and stuff, which can be good on some levels, but you also have to be careful of, storytelling around health, or even some people creating their own health issues out of thin air. Now, I'm sorry, it's not everybody, but just in general, people need to be a lot more careful about health in this phase as well. And especially for the next year and a half, because of the eclipses in the health signs, that are talking about changes to health as well. So there's that part about all this Pisces. And then, again, it can just draw people into their own world. Their own imagination gets stimulated. Creativity can get stimulated. The need for drugs and alcohol for some people will get even more stimulated this next month, basically. So any kind of avoidance, procrastination is going to be a lot easier for people, because again, they're pulled back into being more passive, and that's the era that we've been in, folks. Is a passive era for a while with this Neptune in Pisces. And I've told you guys before about the new era coming, how we're actually coming into a masculine era, because the future in the new era is all about Aries, Aquarius, and Gemini. These are 2 air signs and 1 fire sign, and they're all 3 masculine signs. And we've been in a feminine era for years. The Pisces era is a feminine era. The Pluto in Capricorn from 2008 has been a feminine era. And then Uranus in Taurus has been a feminine era. So the outer planets shifting to the masculine signs is going to show that the world is coming into a much more active, outward, taking the initiative, kind of energetic, versus the more passive, more behind the scenes, pulled into your own life, your own world, and feelings of things. It's just coming into a different flavor for the world. But right now, this is the last bit of what we've already had for years, is all this Pisces, the sensitivity. And then it's also spirituality and metaphysics is going to be very strong, but also just a lot of imagination and creativity, and a lot of stuff about conspiracies, whether it's real or not. All this stuff is going to be focused on. But I do think that the biggest part of this closing out is what I said earlier about all the hidden things that we haven't been clear about are going to be exposed and coming out more and more and more. So seeing more of the dark side, seeing more of behind the scenes and what's been happening. So overall, that's the flavor of things that we're in right now. Feelings, intuition. So it's not as good for logic and the details and getting down to practical matters of life in this particular phase. More of that will come later. But right now, Again, I think it's just a very sensitive phase in general for people that will increase more and more from this point forward. And then, the stress and the worry for some people, the fear for some people as that Mercury reaches Saturn. Or for other people, it could be about looking at responsibilities and commitments for the year ahead and using your imagination and planning and getting ready, like I said, preparing your energetic level for what's ahead. All right, so let's go through this chart day by day, starting here on Tuesday, February 18. And the moon is currently at, looks like almost 9 degrees. So the moon has been trine Mercury today for a few hours here in the first part of the day, which is a pretty good alignment, again, between feelings and intuition. The moon here, it's still in a deeper spot. It wants a deeper connection. It wants deeper intimacy. And there's a stronger potential, especially on a communicative level. But sometimes this isn't just verbal communication. This can be unspoken communication as well with the moon and Mercury. So again, it's better for intuition than just logic and, outward communication. But it still could be good too for, writing or speaking or putting something out there that's communicative. It's just people are generally, again, pulled into their own private world. And with the moon here in Scorpio, there's a need to control things, to control the feelings and the mood and not be exposed as much, to not put yourself out there as much in this particular phase, generally speaking here. And then there's only 2 inconjunctions for the rest of the day. The moon is inconjunct to Venus here. That'll be separating for the rest of the day. That's, again, 2 different flavors of things going on. We have this Venus in Aries that's just slowing down. It's stuck here. It's going to go retrograde here. And that's all about the self, the value for the self. And the love needs to be about the self more in this phase. But it's also entering this overall relationship and partnership dynamic to figure something out, where we stand with love, with desire, with relationship. But there's lots of time for that. It's not so much this week. So the feelings are at odds with our desires and our preference of things in this moment. But again, it's not going to last. And then the moon will be in conjunct to Jupiter for the rest of the day for a few hours there. And then that's pretty much the only aspects for today. So moon in conjunct to Jupiter, that's all this outward, communicative, networking, media, mind and stimulated activity in everyday environment versus the mood and the feelings of things that are, again, deeper and more intuitive and not as outward and communicative. And then also the way people feel and their beliefs about things could go through an adjustment in the evening hours. That'll be, this is the afternoon hours for the West Coast, the evening hours on the East Coast. Did I say West Coast? West Coast. Sorry, let me start over here. The moon in conjunct to Jupiter on the West Coast is the afternoon hours. And then on the East Coast, the evening hours, and the UK and some of Europe there will be the overnight hours, late to night overnight hours. But anyway, check the description for the timestamps and adjust to your local time. It's like 8 hours from California to UK time. So that's the last aspect in play, but the moon is still in overall harmony with all the Pisces today. So it's a pretty decent day. It looks like, probably, besides a little bit of irritation or adjustment is possible for the second half of the day. So then we get to the next day on February 19th, Wednesday, and the moon is pretty much forming a grand trine with Mars and Saturn first thing in the morning here. So moon trine Mars and moon trine Saturn, and then the moon is in conjunct to Chiron and then opposing Uranus. So with the grand trine, this is a great time. Now it is pretty early in the morning for most people here. So starting at 4 o'clock a.m. on the West Coast. So first thing in the morning on the East Coast and still morning into afternoon in the UK. Take advantage of this aspect with this grand trine to get things done, to be more disciplined and productive if you want to. It doesn't mean you have to, but things are generally more flowing with activity and feelings. But because Mars is really getting slow here, Mars is still very powerful. And that's the background vibe all week that you should be cautious of, like I said in the beginning of this report, with accidents and injuries and mood and feelings about things. But because, the moon here in Scorpio, it is being ruled by this Mars, and Mars is in the moon sign. So there's actually a mutual reception in this aspect, which makes Mars in this temporary way more powerful, and even the moon more powerful in this, only for a really short period of time here. Don't get me wrong. So, you really have to take advantage of it when the moon is at 17 degrees, basically through 20 degrees. And that's, again, just a better mood for activity and passion and structure and order, maintaining emotional maturity, on Wednesday is pretty strong. So that's a pretty good aspect. And then the moon in conjunct to Chiron, that's a little more of a sensitive connection that comes in for Wednesday night. Super early overnight hours for other people. And then the moon will be opposing Uranus for late on Wednesday night. Again, for other people, it's the overnight morning hours for everybody else besides the West Coast. So as the moon here this is 11 o'clock a.m. that this is taking place. So scratch what I just said. This is the moon opposite Uranus is going to be in the afternoon, evening hours for most people here on the West Coast, and let's just say on the East Coast, Wednesday night, overnight hours for the UK. So anyway, moon opposite Uranus can show some unpredictability in mood changes, surprises, a little bit of a rebelliousness, and something starting to change here from the easy flow of where it was at for Tuesday and most of Wednesday by the time we get to Wednesday evening here. But there could be a change of plans, or just expect the unexpected, basically for the evening on Wednesday. And then the moon moves past that, and that's the last aspect until Thursday, February 20th. The moon is at the last degrees of Scorpio, but in harmony with the North Node of Destiny and the South Node. So it could be a fateful morning, early morning on Thursday. And then the moon will be changing signs. So the really early overnight hours, it's very different from the main day on Thursday. So the last aspect of the moon in Scorpio will be forming a trine aspect to Neptune as well, which again, it's more sensitive and intuitive and kind of drawn into people's own world of imagination and creativity. Thursday early morning, most people are sleeping, but then when we wake up on Thursday morning, the moon is in Sagittarius, reaching the last quarter moon phase with the sun, the crisis in consciousness phase. And this sets up one of the more challenging next few days from this point forward. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday could have a little more of a challenge, generally speaking. So as the moon comes into Sag out of the deep end of Scorpio, things get bigger, more amplified for good or bad. But we also see that Mercury is making the square to Jupiter on this day as well, as the moon is in Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter. So this is an indication of things over the top on Thursday, because again, the moon in Sag tends to go big and overindulge, and then Mercury square Jupiter can be a little bit of an exaggeration with media and news and information. So be very cautious of this as you're going through Thursday. Any type of conversations you're having with people, just understand that people might be overstating something perhaps, or they could be making a big deal about something that's a little bit out of balance in some way. And then there's this challenge as the moon will square the sun. But the moon does form a sextile to Pluto as well, which kind of changes the mood to be more outward, to be more social from this phase, even though the main focus in the stellium is still behind the scenes. The emotions, the feelings, the needs have come out to be more outward at this phase. But that's going to be a part of the clash. The challenge is the feelings, the inward behind the scenes vibes versus the outward and the mood to be more bold and big and indulgent. But now that the moon is in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, more culture issues start to come out. Issues about beliefs and faith and what's real start to come out, especially because as the moon squares the sun here on Thursday in the afternoon hours, both of these signs are ruled by Jupiter. These are both belief system signs. So again, culture, beliefs, opinions are all being challenged. What's real? What's not real? And a big mood, but also a mood that's not cooperative necessarily, a mood that doesn't, some people might have to be taking action or doing something. They might not feel like it. Usually, like I've said so many times, it's just a phase where things aren't flowing as easily. There's sometimes a lack of cooperation when the moon and sun are square. And it just shows because where our focus is very different between our feelings of things in this moment here. So the crisis in consciousness, we have to work something out in our head around perception, around news and information, and the way we're just overall perceiving things. So that's a big part of the challenge on Thursday. And then, Mercury square Jupiter for the rest of the day, and then the moon trines Venus for the last aspect of the day. So there's a few hours here once we get to Thursday night that there's an opening for feeling more satisfied, more content, more pleasure in that moment, especially being more social or dealing with relationships and outward stuff, being more bold, adventurous. But again, it's just people are generally able to feel more content and satisfied Thursday night, depending on where you live, the timing. So you have to, again, check the list and get the exact time to calculate it for you. And let's see, that's the last aspect. Yeah, that's in place until we get to Friday on February 21st. And the moon is halfway through Sagittarius and forming a T-square opposite Jupiter and square Mercury. So again, we start things off on Friday morning with big news, big information. The mind is super stimulated, but also feelings and the energetic things versus the mental, the details, the logic of things. And the moon squaring Mercury shows that the heart and mind are on two different pages. Again, it could be about belief, what's real, what's not real, faith, and culture issues. And media is wrapped up in making it over-amplified. And the mood is over-amplified as the moon is opposite Jupiter. It doesn't have to be all negative with moon Jupiter. It can just show a big mood for good or bad, overindulging in something for good or bad. And here's Mars getting, really close to its stationary point here. So it's really amped up as well, emotions and feelings. And when the moon is going through Sag, it's ruling this Mars in this critical area of the chart. Mars is still in Cancer, the homeland, your own property and home area, family stuff being stirred up, feelings and emotions and things being cut out, so that we can move forward in new ways. So wherever you have Cancer in your chart, whatever area of life that is, it's still being stimulated a lot from this moon and Sag going through squares. So be careful of your mood, your emotional reaction, other people's mood and emotional reaction. And again, slow down and pay closer attention to what you're doing to avoid accidents and injuries. So Friday 21st, then we have the moon in conjunct to Mars, and the moon is square Saturn. This looks like a tough day actually on Friday. Because then we see that the moon is squaring Saturn, which just adds a heaviness, a pressure for the second half of the day, moon having to adjust to Mars, to feelings and the mood versus action, activity, home and family and property. So something a little heavier here is going on for Friday evening, Friday night. Although then the moon forms a trine to Chiron real quick for the last aspect. But there's still something a little more challenging going on for Friday, it looks like. So just be patient on Friday. Know that the mood is kind of heavier. It's a clash because the moon in Sagittarius doesn't want to deal with anything heavy or too serious. The moon in Sagittarius is the comedian moon. It likes to be the smartass, have fun, joke around, be adventurous and playful. And it's also the know-it-all sign. So a lot of opinions could be coming out here that are running into conflict or, other issues. So just, I would tone things down on all levels when the moon is going through Sag, because it could be over amping up everything. So it can also be self-righteous in this kind of dynamic with Saturn. And it's a little more challenging to feel content, to feel satisfied, to get nurtured from self or others. It's like, even if you were to dig into some comfort food in this moment, it would likely not be satisfying, when you're in this kind of a square with the moon or Venus or something like that. So just be aware of that dynamic. It'll pass. It's not the end of the world. We deal with it every month. And that is what we have for Friday. And then we get to the weekend. On Saturday, February 22nd, the moon is at the last degrees of Sagittarius and forming a T-square with the nodes of Fate and a square with Neptune. So this, again, can bring up storms and weather and water events that are fateful and destined during this time period on Saturday morning, or just Saturday in general, but it could be coming out at this time. But again, it could also be the way people are feeling, reality and belief and faith and what's true and what's not true, some emotional confusion, some doubts, are possible. But because the moon is T-squared the nodes of Fate, it's fateful. Whatever's happening on Saturday morning, it could have a long-term effect on the future for good or bad. And the world and the mood is at a crossroads first thing on Saturday morning, which will change the overall mood to be very different as the day goes on. But be cautious on this Saturday morning point. It could also be, showing that people are tired or drained, just not feeling, as active. And then that changes the mood to be a little more serious, a little more heavy as the day goes on, as it ingresses Capricorn, one of the moon's debilitation signs. That just shows that people aren't as easily feeling overall satisfied or getting everything we want very easily. And if you just look at the chart, excuse me, we see that there's a lot of debilitation in the sky right now. We see that now for the temporary, the moon is debilitated. We see that Mercury's debilitated. Venus is debilitated. Jupiter's debilitated, and Mars is debilitated. So having all these planets in signs that they don't like to be in shows that the world right now is not able to get everything at once in the short term. But you have to be patient. There's something that is available for the long term. If you're working on things behind the scenes and you're planning and you're trying to get to where you need to be to get the good stuff, then these planets are going to be changing and we'll more easily be able to get what we want. But just be aware of that. With all these debilitations, we don't have what it takes to get what we want in this phase as easily. There's some cases where we can, depending on our own birth chart and how these transits are aligning with you, there's some exceptions to this, but in the general theme of what's going on, there's just too much debilitation right now to be getting a lot of the good stuff. But again, there's a need to be working on those things from behind the scenes, closing things out, preparing for the future so that we can get all the good stuff this year. All right, so Saturday, early morning's fateful and destined, and then right as the moon is ingress Capricorn, there's no more aspects for the rest of Saturday, and this is only around the evening hours. So the moon will be in Capricorn on Saturday night, now ruled by this Saturn. However, the moon in Capricorn is in harmony with Pisces. So the moon will be building a sextile with the sun exact the following day. So as we get to the following day on Sunday, February 23, that sextile is in play, overnight hours, which is where generally we're coming into a more harmony phase now, where things are more cooperative and flowing as the day goes on. But we still have a few challenges here on Sunday. So then we have Mercury trine Mars, which again is a great aspect. We see the S here with Mars. Mars is starting to station direct now, but again, it's going to be stuck here at 17 degrees until the second week of March, when it enters 18 degrees and starts building up momentum forward. So Mars is going to be very sluggish all this week and all next week. Just keep that in mind. But Mercury trine Mars, our mind is in good alignment with our action that's now turned direction. There's a turning point here on Sunday with Mars direct. You know, you're going to hear a lot about Mars turning direct, where, oh, now everything is about action and now everybody has the energy to do everything they need to do. I don't think so. Not in this case, because the Pisces is still in place. The Pisces is the end, like I said. It's the sign that's tired. The whole world is actually tired. And that's why I don't think there's going to be a civil war in the same way that there was last time that Neptune came in to Aries. Plus, last time Saturn was not here. Last time Saturn was in Virgo, building the opposition with that Neptune. And the bigger thing about the Civil War for the United States in the 1860s was that the United States reached a progressed full moon phase in the sign of Aries. So there was a lot of energy for war on this last cycle that Neptune came into Aries. This cycle, it doesn't look like the world has the energy to go to war in this way. Because again, the Pisces shows that the world is tired and we just want to move on. We want to move forward with life. Generally speaking, of course, there's still people that are opposing the new era and everything that's happening, but I just don't think that they have what it takes to actually declare a true civil war. So I'm not worried about civil war, actually. That's good. But for the whole world, there's a new world order shaping up. And it's actually the new era with Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius. There's a minor grand trine between all these three signs with the apex to Saturn and Neptune and Aries. So it looks like there's going to be some cooperation with the big three in the world, China, Russia, and the United States, in some sort of a new way, shaping the global world order. We'll see how that, I'll talk more about that in future reports, but it's definitely big. And things are not looking actually too bad this year, but 2026 does have a bigger possibility of a global conflict that could start to come in if it doesn't get worked out this year. But we have lots of time to look at that, and I will in the future. But my point is that Pisces just shows that people are very tired, generally speaking. The energetics are low, generally speaking. And so Mars, we're going to have to give it time to build up the overall energy levels, especially once it gets back to Leo. That's a whole different flavor of Mars. But it's still good that Mercury, the way we're thinking, we have this good alignment to the home, the property, the family, and then on the mundane level, immigration has been completed. And that's for the USA. That's what Mars did. The Mars retrograde for the USA was about immigration, going back and fixing the border. And now it's been fixed already. Mars is stationed direct. And now we can move forward slowly, very, very slowly. But the mind and the action, they're on the same page here on Sunday. But because Mars is stationary, it's still kind of amping up a little bit of tension here and emotions and feelings about things. But because the moon is ruling Mars and the moon is in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is trine Mars, I think overall there's still emotional stability here. Things are calmer. With the moon in Capricorn, there's a need to be looking at your goals, your ambitions, and work and projects, and take care of business, get the job done. That's what makes people feel generally more comfortable when the moon is in transit through Capricorn, being responsible, being punctual, being mature, being disciplined. And the moon is square Venus and in conjunct to Jupiter as the day goes on here. So the square to Venus, again, it's just not the phase to be overly feeling content and satisfied in that moment for a few hours there. It's a little more challenging because Venus here talks about the self and freedom and independence and doing what you want to do. But the moon here talks about your responsibilities and what you have to do. So there's a clash between your mood and your desires. Generally speaking, won't affect everybody, but this is Sunday morning. So there might be a need for fun and pleasure, and again, doing what you want to do versus work and commitments that you have on Sunday in some way. But that dynamic will pass. It's not going to last very long. And then the moon in conjunct to Jupiter shows having to adjust to media, news, and information and a variety of activity and mental stimulation versus, again, being practical and work, keeping things in order. And that's going to be, and then Mars station direct as the moon opposes Mars and really amps up emotions and feelings and passion, but still in a grounded, more practical way. And then this opposition between Capricorn and Cancer is also the safety, security axis and comfort axis. So we're talking about home and family stuff and property stuff and your emotions, your feelings, your needs of things versus your public life, your goals and ambitions or reputation, in the world. So work versus home stuff is kind of the opposition by Sunday night. But people's feelings and emotions could still be a little bit reactive despite the Capricorn moon because the moon is ruling Mars stationary in opposition. But the moon is also sextile Mercury and Saturn, and that's going to be exact for the following day on Monday, February 24. And it does look like February 24, there's nothing but easy aspects other than the moon squaring Chiron, but there's a lot of sextiles and trines from the moon here on Monday. So again, this is more of a harmony phase, taking care of business and work and projects from behind the scenes. And with moon sextile Mercury, that's good for publishing, writing, communicating. If you have to do any kind of business stuff like that, that'd be a good day to do it on next Monday. And then moon sextile Saturn shows emotional stability and maturity is in place, generally speaking. But then the square to Chiron amps up some sensitivity, some insecurity is possible during the day on Monday. And then the moon is trine Uranus, showing innovation and creativity is available for work and business and money stuff here. And then the moon is aligning with the nodes of fate in an easy way. So Monday evening, Monday night could also be fateful, having a long-term effect on the future for good or bad. Then the moon connects in an easy way to Neptune, adding more sensitivity, imagination. But the moon is also applying towards Pluto, so things are going to change and get more intense by Tuesday. But for now, the moon connecting to Neptune just sensitizes things and adds more creativity, imagination, and dreams to any kind of plans or goals going on here for Monday. And then the moon changes signs. Ingress is Aquarius for Monday night, and it's right next to Pluto, and things get pretty intense for Monday night into Tuesday, February 25. And this will be next week's report. It'll be the dark moon phase that we come into on next Tuesday. Moon closing out the Aquarius cycle and then reaching the sun for the Pisces new moon by next week. It's going to be all about Pisces once we get there. So that's what we have as far as aspects this week that you can find when they come exact, written in the description below. Hit that like button if you do like my reports. I appreciate it. And I hope this is helpful. Thanks for returning and watching another report. You take good care.